Tips from Trestle is brought to you by eMenu Choice Point of Sale, Wizox AI, and Benny Keith Foods. Welcome to Tips from Trestle, the Senior Living Food and Hospitality Podcast. This podcast explores the senior living industry with a unique focus on food, hospitality, and the community experience. I'm your host, Aaron Fish. My goal for this podcast: educate, inform, and inspire leaders in senior living. How? By bringing the resident and customer experience to the front of mind in our industry. We should bring the passionate spirit of food and hospitality to everything that we do and everyone we serve each and every day. So what are we waiting for? Let's get to it. Today on Tips from Trestle, I'm joined by Jenny Kinderas. Jenny brings over 25 years of senior and healthcare industry expertise to her role as founder of Premier Senior Solutions, where she serves as a trusted placement consultant helping families navigate challenging transitions. Jenny's comprehensive approach guides families through every step from initial consultation and tours to admission paperwork and move-in coordination. Her clients consistently praise her for going above and beyond, with one family noting their outcome would not have been as good without Jenny's expertise. As someone working daily with both families and communities nationwide, Jenny offers a unique perspective on what truly creates successful senior living experiences. Jenny, thanks for joining me today on Tips from Trestle.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I looking forward to this conversation because I think your background and what you do in placement gives you a little bit of a unique perspective on the senior living experience. I constantly tell clients and customers that it's so important to really dial that in and become like your own experience. And so I'd love to start with you thinking about all of your experience, all the communities you've worked with. You've got this definition of a high quality community. So when you think about the food service, the culture, resident engagement standards, what criteria do they need to meet from your perspective before you'll even consider placing clients there?
Oh, that's such a great question. And I think with my background, not only doing placement, but having worked in assisted living as well, it's given me some unique experience. So both ends of the spectrum I've been able to see. And really so many communities, as you talk the talk, do they walk the walk? It's really about the resident. It's about the total engagement. It's about the total experience, really, and how well they're actually bringing that to the table. And really, I think resident satisfaction is going to showcase that. There's lots of specific things that I would love to talk about during a tour and things I see. But I think overall, they really have to think outside of the box and realize dining is particularly dining is such an important piece of the resident experience. And it's really got to be at front and center for the resident.
One of the things that you have this kind of pre-qualification process that you use when you think about things like, what is this prospective resident? What are their care needs? What are their budget? Like, what's the location? And so specifically thinking about food and dining, what are some of the things that you look for or that you've had clients tell you is important to make sure that this community will actually deliver on the promises they make shortly after they move in, say 6, 8, 10 months afterwards?
No, that's a great point, because everybody, to your point, says that they talk a great game. They think we have this great dining experience, but I think you can feel it. And I think as you're touring, there's certain things that you see. For instance, if I go into a dining room and it's completely empty and it's mealtime, to me, I'm not saying it has to be like a high school cafeteria, but you want there to be some engagement and not that awkward feeling. I think that obviously the quality of food is very important. As I mentioned, mealtime is really the most important time for a lot of residents, and really clinically too, to get eyes on them just to make sure everything's okay. But coming to the dining room is their time for socialization. It's time to experience the food that they may like, because if they don't like it, they're going to tell you. And if it's reheated or if it just doesn't even look pleasing, that's just an instant turn off for anybody, not just seniors, but us as well. So I always tend to think in terms of that as well. If I wouldn't eat it, why would I expect a senior citizen to eat it?
Yeah. And I think sometimes especially based on this high quality community that you look at, the the menu and the food, like people think it has to be this over the top experience. And I'm curious, do you find that really truly it's more about the quality and consistency as opposed to the show and the flash?
Absolutely. In fact, quite the contrary sometimes, because a lot of times residents don't want to feel that they're coming to a five-star restaurant and they have to dress appropriately and they have to be very demure and afraid to engage in conversation as they normally would. So a lot of times that's actually very intimidating to residents when they have the over-the-top presentation and they're like, I just want to come and eat my meal and enjoy it. So I think that works against community in a lot of ways. Some of my favorite communities to walk through are one that they know the residents so well. For instance, there's one I walk into and there's a teacup, the exact same table, the exact same seat every day. And they're like, she only wants that seat, but we know she likes to have a cup of tea prior to anything else. So you can see the little personal touches versus the perfect setting, the food presentation that works against them, I feel, in a lot of ways.
I agree. I think I'll refer to the 5-star hot dog kind of experience, right?
Right.
They want a hot dog, but it needs to be done really well. And so,
Right.
one of the things you focus on is you try to help families navigate finding the right place and try to really save them time and frustration by filtering out communities that aren't good fit for them long term. So when you look at the resident experience, what are some red flags you've kind of learned to look for that might predict there would be a mismatch for those prospects?
Yeah, I've got a few. And to me, it's just such an instant turnoff. The one thing that drives me absolutely crazy, that's the big red flag of mine, if I'm touring a community, and I'm not talking about it, right after the breakfast rush at 9:30. I'm talking, say, 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. when everything's cleaned up from the previous meal. The linen should be on the table. Again, does it have to be the finest china? No, but we need to have dignity. We need to have the linen clean, not wrinkled, the place setting ready to burn. So a lot of the residents make their own placemats or centerpieces. Those should be showcased. That really shows, I think, that the community spirit. Just sometimes I've seen communities using the dining room as like their laundry folding area. I'm like, this is not okay. Even down to like the way that the servers and the staff represent themselves, the way that they're dressed. If they look sloppy, you think, what precautions or what sanitation are you using when you're cooking for me if you're presenting yourself sloppily in your dress? So those are some things that just are huge red flags for me.
Do you have any that prospects have shared with you that really stand out that they look for?
In terms of dining, they always want to know about the food because everybody's, how is the food? How is the food? So a good community, I feel like, will use that opportunity to invite a potential resident or invite the family in. Not just on a day when they're like, oh, we're really going all out today with this special occasion. Come on in, we're having a special dinner. No, any day of the week, you should be able to go in and feel the vibe and see what's going on in the dining room for yourself.
I always tell the communities that I work with that your lunch tour experience should be identical to the everyday experience because what they're going to experience is that, right? And so doing the over the top tour lunch and like having a special offering.
Yeah, it does. I completely agree with you. It's what do we do on an everyday basis? Like you said, we don't have to roll out the red carpet one day of the month. This is how we operate 7 days a week. And I think, too, something that's super important for the residents is really making it specific to their need and what their desires are. So, yes, of course, you're going to have your resident council meetings every month, which I think is an important piece that really management should pay attention to. What are the residents asking for? What are they wanting to make changes with? Additionally, again, going along with the every day doesn't have to be this big block. The little simple things make such a difference sometimes. Say that you have a resident that German heritage, and it really would mean a lot to them to have some like pierogies or sauerkraut or whatever. Make it a fun thing. Make an Irish happy hour, like a pub. It doesn't have to be over the top. Again, just really do fun little things that are going to make the residents happy. Maybe they haven't cooked in 20 years and this should make them really happy. Or even if it's not their homemade, it's still tapping into their heritage.
Absolutely. I love that connection piece. One of the things that I wanted to ask you about, because you start at the very beginning of the process with residents and you stay with them until they are literally in their apartments in the community.
And beyond.
So,
yeah,
and beyond. And so are there any stories? And the reason I ask this about stories is I think if our communities can tell these stories better about the experiences for the residents, it makes them more palatable, more marketable, and they have this dining experience that they can utilize. And so are there any stories of a dining experience or a resident engagement experience that you use to get those residents to feel like they can see themselves living in the community?
Technology continues to drive changes in senior care, and that includes food service. eMenu Choice is an award-winning point-of-service application for managing the dining function in senior living communities. This mobile, touchscreen-enabled software enhances the dining experience for residents while streamlining processes for staff. The flexibility and functionality of eMenu Choice makes it an effective solution for any type of senior living environment, from independent and assisted living to skilled nursing facilities. It works for production kitchens or restaurant-style service with options for per meal or a la carte pricing and accommodates a variety of payments, including bill to account, meal credits, and credit cards. Created by a senior care provider with more than a century of experience serving older adults, eMenu Choice eliminates communication barriers between staff and residents while enabling person-centered choices and greater resident satisfaction. eMenu Choice, transforming dining for senior living.
Yeah, I think the one I mentioned already about the resident teacup, I just tour that community quite often. And I love seeing that, knowing it's going to be there, a sense of comfort for me, even showing my family, hey, they're really going to take care of your loved one. I think it's just, again, like I remember years ago when I worked in a community similar to my heritage German, little thing that I mentioned. We had a resident that was turning 103 and her background was Slovenian, and she just wanted like a polka band and some good Slovenian food. And we made that happen for her. And it was like just brought her back to her childhood. It was a whole party that the team could engage in, family, outside vendors came in. It was just, again, doesn't have to be 5-star cuisine. It was just really making her feel good. Granted, that was for one particular day, but I think just everyday nuances or everyday examples, rather, when residents come into the dining room and the staff greet them, they know exactly where they want to sit. They have their chair pulled up for them already. They have their menu open a certain way. Maybe somebody's in a wheelchair and needs to be in a specific position with the chair moved down already, whatever the case may be. It's just knowing your residents and knowing how they adapt.
I love these stories, right? Because it talks about the connection and what you can experience in a community and how the staff can support you. And so when you think about these stories, I want to talk a little bit about your role as a placement agent, I guess. I don't know if that's the right terminology, but flipping this to thinking as an operator, I want to work with someone like yourself who has people constantly coming to me, trying to find the right place, trying to be that matchmaker, if you will. And so when you think about these stories, how do those influence your recommendations and how that impacts a community in your Rolodex versus maybe a more sterile, polished tour path? Here's the model, here's the dining room, blah, blah, blah.
Completely affects my recommendation. And number one, it's such a good feeling for me, even to walk into a community and sort of remembering some of those stories or seeing things that are going on in the community that make them feel like home in the dining room. That to me right away is like my comfort zone. And I'm able to share these stories with family and be like, this actually did happen here. Or even you can point out an example going on right at that particular moment that a more sterile community might not be able to showcase. I think that a lot of communities get it wrong because they almost feel like dining becomes a chore, just something in your day that you check off your list, like time for lunch, check, time for dinner, check.
Yeah.
But when you think about it, that's really the time to shine and really the time to make it feel personal. And those are the stories that I love hearing about and love seeing. I've even had crazy stories that have happened in the dining room that like aren't so fuzzy and warm, but they're funny. And I'm still able to relay those to clients. So it absolutely affects my decision because I know what their loved one is going to feel when they move into that community.
Yeah. I think that perspective is important. We spend so much time and energy and resources on the great pictures and the perfect websites and
Yes.
trying to brand everything and set ourselves apart, where really these are the things, the storytelling and this true real life experience is what sets our community experiences apart.
So true. I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a community on a tour and say maybe it's later in the afternoon before dinner, or maybe even evening tour after dinner. The lights are off in the dining room. The door is locked. I'm like, hold on. So I'm sneaking in ahead of the salesperson trying to flip the lights on for them. We're not just going to go past like it doesn't exist. Let's talk about it. So that to me is a big red flag. Also, going back to your question earlier, it really is such an integral part of their day. And again, not a chore. It's something that we really need to hone in on because like you said, you can have all these beautiful brochures, but if you don't have a comfortable environment that the residents can really enjoy themselves and want to share that with their family that come in and visit, or even potentially tell other residents, then you have nothing at the end of the day.
Yeah. Totally. In perspective is so important.
Yeah.
When you think about your job is to deliver for these families, they come to you because of your experience, and you have to build the trust with them. What are some, and you've probably mentioned a few of these, but what would you say be some of the really key, like 2 or 3 culture elements in a community that really can create a gap between what they say they do versus what residents will actually experience when they move in?
For over a century, Benny Keith has been a trusted leader in the food service industry. As a broadline distributor, we offer an extensive selection of products, delivering to 21 states through 10 distribution centers. We can help you create a thriving culinary culture by pairing quality products with customized solutions that elevate your residents' dining experience. Our team of registered dietitians provide unmatched customer service by modifying menus, selecting recipes, ensuring regulatory compliance, and more. Quality, value, and service are at the heart of everything we do. Benny Keith Foods puts the care back in healthcare.
Yeah, so a lot of them will talk about their dining and say, oh, we always have alternatives. But a lot of times I'm finding they actually jump. They're out of things, or I'm like, don't advertise something if you don't have it. And in terms of culture, I love the community that not only have a great dining experience, but they also do things in addition to that are centered around food, the happy hour, or like I said, the pub night, or the tea time for Mother's Day. So in addition to their everyday dining experience, which they've really done a good job with, they incorporate these other examples. Or one community, for example, that I love does, like they did a Shark Week theme. A new Shark series was coming out. And so they made these cute little alcoholic glasses and actually had little candy sharks in them, but it was like a mixed drink, just making it fun when the residents come out. Maybe there's a baking club where they're baking for dinner that week. So just any way the residents can feel involved and actually enjoy what they're eating and that full experience is just what everybody should start for.
Yeah. I'm curious, would you say, like thinking about the communities that are at the top of your list, you would start with for recommendations? Do you find that the team, the directors, will say, the leaders of the departments, are really more like intertwined, really feel more of the community and feel that the sale of the community is just naturally part of what they do, versus maybe, okay, I'm going to stop in the dining room and talk to the chef for 5 minutes, or I'm going to poke my head on this watercoloring activity?
Absolutely. That is such a solid point. I think any good community has to realize that the sales process and a touring process is really the responsibility of all of the directors and frankly, all of the team, not just the director. But the good communities that I work with, they know ahead of time of tourists coming in. And again, not that they're putting on a show specifically for that day, but they know, hey, I'm going to make sure that I say hello, ask them what their favorite foods are. If they answer, oh, I don't know, say they say grilled cheese, we do a great grilled cheese, or maybe that's a bad example, but whatever it is, making sure that they really are enjoying their dining experience. I find that, yes, the teams that are very cohesive and all work together versus, like you said, just a pop in, almost like the more, and I think your word sterile was actually really appropriate. The more sterile ones were like, hey, I feel like I'm bothering you, but I'm just going to introduce you to this resident real quick that's touring. Do you have a second? And it's, oh, I'm putting my order in, but yeah, okay, sure. So there's definitely a difference. And I will tell you that my favorite communities that really embody that culture that we're talking about, they're not necessarily the brand new fancy ones. They're not, a lot of times I stay away from those, especially if they're brand new. And I talk about that a lot, but it's the communities that have their processes down. It feels like home, feels like family. It just feels good when you walk in, and that's evident in their dining by either what you're seeing yourself or experiencing when you're eating there.
Yeah, I think that last point is so important, right? When we sit here as an industry, we think, man, we got to have the next brightest and shiniest thing, and that's what's going to sell. It comes down to what's that feeling I get when I'm in the kitchen? What is that connection to the staff? And as long as the place is clean and
right
and tidy, like maybe it can be a few years old.
Absolutely. I always actually feel more comfortable in communities that are a little bit older. And maybe that's because I worked in a community that was a little bit older, and I always kept it at capacity because it was, yes, a little bit older, but we felt like a family. And even the dishwasher would stop. We didn't even have to tell them this. They knew. It was like the expectation because we all had the same thought process. So the dishwasher, hey, how are you today? I'm so-and-so, nice to meet you. You just feel that. And yeah, I prefer sometimes those communities that aren't brand new.
Yeah. What would you say, or are there things that leadership in a community can do to get their staff comfortable in that setting? Or is it just a natural kind of impression or spring of the way the leaders are?
It's probably both, but I do think it's really, of course, it corporate down, but I really do think it's the director of that building that sets the tone, which sets the tone for every department and every single staff member in that building. I expect an aide or someone doing laundry to be just as interactive as the head of dining or the executive director. So I think to get to that level of comfort that you want, you really do have to have a good director. And again, I think sometimes that's a little bit hard for corporates when they're looking at numbers and metrics versus looking at the actual experience that you're trying to achieve. But I do think that is something that needs to be really concentrated on, that building experience.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Jenny, as we wrap up here, think a little bit about the vetting process that you use when you are helping your clients connect to communities. If you had advice to give to senior living operators who really want to build this authentic culture around dining or engagement or just in general in their communities, what would those things be that they could show to consultants like you to build that trust for you to put them at the top of your high quality community list?
Yeah, I think if it's a senior living executive that's not in their building, they're more of a regional role, they need to be in that building. They need to just go in and just observe what's going on first and foremost. Don't tell anybody they're coming in. Just sit in the moment, see what it feels like, see how the residents are, see how they respond to dining. Just to, number one, observe so you can take that and run with it. And then start figuring out what changes to make, if any. Yes, we all care about numbers at the end of the day, but again, to really get those numbers and get your occupancy, you want to make sure the environment is right and you don't have a lot of staff turnover. And again, something is dining that's so important. I think they need to not only sit in there, like I mentioned, and see what could be improved, but maybe they need to attend a resident council meeting because, as I said, that is where the residents are going to speak their mind, usually about food, good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe take a look at some other successful communities that have done really well with their dining program. Are they competitors? Yes, and you don't have to approach it that way, but there's a reason they're doing so well. What's that different? What does that look like?
Absolutely. Jenny, this has been a great conversation. I think this perspective of third-party placement, like what did you see? What do you do for your clients? I think is so invaluable for operators. And I'd love for you to share how people can connect with you, learn more about your services, follow you on social media, because that's how we found each other.
Exactly.
So just share your information for our listeners.
Absolutely. They can always go to my website. It's www.premier-senior.com. My TikTok is probably the biggest social media account that I have. And all of my links and everything are with that as well. I had to look up my username, but I always forget it. It's at Jen K1120. Senior living expert is my tagline, if you will. But then all of my links, they can download for resources. They can reach out to me for a consultation. I can help them nationwide. So there's numerous ways to connect with me through there.
Perfect. Well, Jenny, I appreciate you joining us today, sharing your perspective, and thanks for being a guest today on Tips from Trestle.
Thanks so much for having me, Aaron. I appreciate everything you do.
So there it is, everybody. Another one in the books. Thanks again for tuning in. Please follow and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at Tips from Trestle. You can also learn more about the work I do by following me on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, and even TikTok. And be sure to check out Trestle Hospitality Concepts at www.tresselhospitalityconcepts.com. I'm your host, Aaron Fish, and this has been another episode of Tips from Trestle.